Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're listening from. This is the last word on rugby. We're chatting all things the return of the URC. Finally, some local matches back. We're done with the Six Nations, some interesting games there. With me again this morning, got Ashfaq. Welcome back, Ashfaq. And then Mike, good to see you again. Let's jump into it, guys. Exciting four matches finally. It's not no longer two matches where we have two South African sides versus each other. But four matches to look forward to this weekend and Friday, starting with the Lions, who's got that knockout spot nailed at the moment. But then Ash, a lot of teams on their heels looking to get into those top eight spots.
How's it, guys? Yes, Leighton. It's great to see our teams playing the overseas opposition for the change. There's not going to be as much sort of blood and guts. When our teams play each other, they almost try to hurt each other. Very competitive and Springbok spots up for grabs. But playing the overseas teams also should be regarded as Springbok trials because that's essentially, the Boks play these teams all the time. So just with the Bulls now playing Leinster, I know it won't be the full Leinster team, but they
Yeah,
very competitive side, even the B team, and they will have a few Irish internationals in their side anyway. So this is the time for those players to really put up their hand and show Rassie that they can play Test rugby this year. And in terms of the UFC log and playoff positions, I feel all four of our teams are still in the running, despite
very
the
much.
Stormers and Lions being a bit further down the log. But if they can get on a run now going forward, they can really sneak into that top eight.
Yeah. Mike, how's things
Yeah,
looking at the Sharks there?
news from the Sharks is quite interesting, and I'm not sure whether Coach John Plumtree wants to laugh or cry, because earlier this week we had this revelation that Eben Etzebeth wasn't going to be available again. So immediately you start to speculate, jeepers, is this concussion thing now becoming even bigger and longer and more serious? So in his team announcement press conference, he cleared that up. He said, and this is the good part, is that he's clear to play. And from a concussion point of view, that seems to all be behind him. But unfortunately, he picked up a hamstring injury, and that was down in Cape Town during the recent Springbok alignment camp. He was doing conditioning work and strained his hamstring, and he won't play for 3 weeks. So yeah, good and bad news, but the main thing is that the concussion seems to be behind him. We can live with the hamstring, as long as that very serious thing appears to have cleared up. But yeah, he announced a team that I think is quite a well balanced, exciting team actually. He gets Makozola Mapimpi back from injury,
Yeah,
and so he's been able to put Ethan Hooker back in his best position of 12, and I think,
agree with that.
wow,
Yeah,
what an exciting prospect to have two of the most attacking young players in the country, and Hooker and Lorenzo
midfield.
Julius as a centre partnership. So that's really cool. They've got Jordan Hendrickson and Jaden, the brothers at 9 and 10. They always seem to work out quite well. Yeah, look, they're playing as every team that is having their best season ever, which I suppose you can say that's not saying much. They
Yeah.
went 3 or 4 years or something without a win. But they've got 25 log points. They've won 5 games. They're not pushovers, but a correctly focused Sharks team playing in front of their home crowd in Durban in their conditions. They're not going to lose.
Pretty much a blow there, that Eben Etzebeth thing. I mean, if he could have gone up against RG Snyman next weekend, that would have been something to watch. But then the Bulls on Saturday, I should have to contend with RG and his Leinster teammates. Although it's an academy side, one they bring here this time of year. Every time they come here with a second string side, but this is probably a game that the Bulls can't afford to lose because they've lost two at home. Games that you thought, especially against the Stormers, that they should have won, but they need to pick up some momentum as well, eh?
Yeah, look, the Bulls have to they can still chase for second spot. Glasgow's in second. I think they're 3 points behind Glasgow.
Yeah,
I think Leinster is out of the top there, unbeaten in 12 games. They like I think 57 points or something. So top spot isn't up for grabs, but definitely second. So yeah, the Bulls need to get back to their usual rhythm, particularly on attack. But as you mentioned earlier, there Reinhard Ludwig was up in the presser this week, and he made a interesting point that he could be playing lock on Saturday. He has been playing blindside flank for most of his senior career, but he actually said that he's been a lock for most of his career, obviously junior career and growing up. So he's actually adapting to blindside flank, and he feels he's not quite there yet to be spoken of as perhaps the next Peter Sef to toy.
yeah,
He's much more comfortable at number five lock, and I think that will help him as well in terms of the line-out calling. You know, you want your number five to be the line-out caller and not necessarily your number seven flank. So, you know, then he can take total control there and facing someone like Athias Snyman, who he described as one of his heroes, will obviously be a great challenge for him, both of his boys and, you know, Athias, former Bulls hero as well. So yeah, if that Bulls pack, I think the key for them is to get them more going on attack and defense, because I feel Lens are brilliant in more stopping. They just find a way, you know, like most Irish teams, they just find a way to stop you in the tracks there, even though it's not going to be their first choice lineup.
yeah.
But I feel the Bulls can impose themselves physically, make sure they line up issues from the Stormers game. I know it was very wet and, you know, it was a really disruptive game against the Stormers because of the weather. But you know, the weather can all clear. It's actually going to rain in Pretoria for most of this week, but Saturday has been forecast to be clear. So hopefully we'll get a dry game, and you know, if the Bulls can get rumbling up front, then they can bring those dangerous backs into play.
Yeah, talking about dangerous backs, the Stormers will be very, very happy that they've got their dangerous backs back.
Hey,
Damian Willems are returning, Sasha Feinberg, Ngome Zulu, Suleiman Hartzenberg. They've been struggling to get that Stormers attacking game running, if I can call it, back with Yuri Matia at fly off. He did excellently against the Bulls in a tactical game that they beat the Bulls almost at their own type of game when it comes to not having the firepower at the back. But how good will it be for the Stormers to have Sasha at 10, Damien at 12, and then Suleiman at whichever wing position he prefers with Leolan Zas combining. Hopefully that's the way Dobson goes, because both of them are also good in the air if it needs to return to a kicking game. Just on that, the return of two good working back Springboks for the Stormers. Certainly an injection they need, especially for the attack.
They're massive players. They're like world-class game-breaking players. You know, Sasha has just had this unfortunate run of injuries. So is Damien. I mean, you know, I just think those guys back, you know, how does John Dobson put them back into the team? You
Yeah,
know,
that's the thing.
he's spoiled for choice. You know, he's got a puzzle before him with some very colorful pieces, and how to make that puzzle all fit perfectly and get the best out of them. You know, it can be a case of, you know, too many game breakers spoil the broth? um, but yeah, I think for me to have Sasha back, and I hope he starts at 10 with respect to Yuri Mateo, who I thought was exceptionally good in the rain against the Bulls. I think, you know, he's got that boot. You know, he can play the territorial game well. But with respect to him, I think Sasha is the business, and I'd like to see him get started again at fly half and just build up some nice steam and get some rugby under the belt,
Yeah,
and just to give him that
100%.
chance of really staking look, I know he's going to rival Andre Pollard for the Springbok fly half berth, but you need more than one fly half. And of course, let's not forget Marnie. But Sasha is special, and I think fly half is his best position. And the sooner he gets started, the better.
Yeah, Mike, I hear both of you guys saying Damien at 12. I'm not so sure. I think it's a tricky one because he plays fullback for the Springboks, Damien Willemse.
Yeah.
He was the first choice until he got injured and now Lele Fassi is there. But you would think that, if Damien can put a string of games together and get back to his best quickly, he would again be the first choice fullback for the Boks. So
Yeah.
now, do you look at the national picture? Do you look at the Stormers
Mm,
picture? I would think that John Dobson would want him at 12
mm,
because he can really contribute and assist Sasha with the playmaking and getting stuck in there. But you also wonder, I mean, Warwick Galant, as wonderful as a footballer as he is, and we know can always come up with a magic, but he can also come up with a few strange and weird and wonderful things from the back.
mm.
So perhaps maybe the steadier hand. I mean, you wouldn't normally think about Damien Willemse being a steadier hand, but this just shows how he's matured in his game over the last few years. That he would actually be. I mean, when he started out at Western Province and the Stormers, he was this guy who just took everybody on, played
Yeah.
fly off most of the time, and just want to step and not really bring the other guys into play. But now he's got that mature head on his shoulders and really brings a sense of calm to any team he plays in. So perhaps fullback for Damien Willems for the Stormers, especially away from home, where the conditions might be tricky and it's not going to be a free flowing game. That might be
Mm,
a better bet. Because as Mike, as you said, Dan du Plessis is there at 12. And we
mm.
have to see about the rest of the outside backs. I like Suleiman Hutzenberg at outside center as well, rather
Yeah.
than him. So perhaps that is also a combination Dan, Dup, and Suleiman in the center and Damien at fullback. I don't know, Leighton, what do you feel?
Yeah, I hear your point, and that's a very, very valid point. I'm also thinking that that 12th spot with Damien just returning from injury, it's going to be a crunch spot. He's going to go into contact a lot, but y- Dobbo could also go with on that switching Dan and Gaza around, Dan being the 12 battering ram, like they did a couple of seasons ago when the two of them were combining in the midfield. Then Damien would run at 13 and Dan Dupe would take up the bashing at 12. So there's a lot of things around that 10, 12, 15 combination that could come into factor when Dobson announces his team. But in terms of just getting the guys to play, I know he prefers a 6-2, so it would be most likely Wandisi Milani on the bench as another utility back with just the scrum off. Um, but
Yeah, here's
I'm
another
I
spanner in the works, Leighton. Here's another spanner in the works. Warwick Galant is actually an outside center. Let us not forget that. At
he's yeah
school level
he's
and growing up and coming through the ranks, he was actually a 13. And he was turned into a fullback, I think, at the Bulls when he joined them after school. So
yeah
that is another sort of, and if Warwick plays at 13, I guess he's perhaps less room to maneuver in terms of making sort of big mistakes because you're in the action there and you
yeah
don't have the space to
in yeah
throw a worldy pass out wide or run from the back when you've got a full line defensive lineup in front of you.
yeah.
So that's also another thing to think about.
And I think that's the reason why they won't play Warwick at 13 or anywhere else in the back line. He belongs at the back. And like you said, with all those worldy passes and all of that, Damien's back, Sasha's back. Those are guys that are more on the attacking mindset of Warwick, and he'll have a guy that will see, oh, but he's trying to put me into this space. So I must run that way. Plenty of times in the past couple of games, we've had Warwick running straight at the touchline, looking for the winger to switch on the inside with him. But then there's no one to take that inside ball when he draws two defenders with him to the outside. So maybe that changes with Sasha and Damien back. We'll find out on Saturday if they can return to to their attacking game plan. It's going to be quite. I'm going to be keen to see what happens with that team selection. Yeah, and how they put it
It's
together.
also, guys, it's also that age-old thing when we saw Sasha coming through and with Mani and Damien there and Warwick, we always said, yeah, how are you going to fit him all into one
Yeah.
back line? And I think the crucial thing is, as we said, they can all play very many different positions. I think Warwick can even play as a wing,
Mm.
if you know if you want all of them on the field. But then Dobson needs to have absolute clarity in what their roles are. It's going to
Yes.
be a case if they all play how they normally play, then I feel it's going to be a case of too many cooks spoil the broth, where everybody wants to be a playmaker. Now, everybody can't be the playmaker. You need guys, certain guys must run the hard lines, other guys must take the outside gap, someone else must, do the short passes or long passes, whatever. And you would feel that the fly off is that man to do that. And Sasha, we know he's done it against the Wallaby, he's done it against the All Blacks. So there's no problem there in terms of his skill set. But now, if you have a Damien also wanting to do all of that, and a Warwick coming from back also wanting to do all of that, then who's the guy calling the shots there? So that's also, we just, I think the Stormers must be careful there. You can have all of them on the field at the same time, but then each one needs to know exactly what they are there to do.
And then just on Friday night, the Lions start off the journey of the South African teams in the URC. They're playing Cardiff, who's placed sixth on the log. They can do all of the other SA franchises a big
Yeah.
favor by beating Cardiff, eh?
Yeah, and the Lions are due a win because, as we all know,
They
they're the
are.
masters of inconsistency. So they win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose
Yeah.
a game. They just lost it at Kings Park to the Sharks in a game they could have won, but as
Mm.
the coaching staff have said, in fact, Frankie Horn said the same thing. They have periods in games where they go to sleep, and
Yeah.
they had a slump just before halftime at Kings Park where they just kind of just got a little bit lost, and that probably lost them the game. But then they'll be back on fire in Cardiff, and I think it really does help them that they have Henko van Wyk back, Kern Horn is back, and Ron
Most
Venter
definitely.
is back. And those are big players. Just one thing that is a real pity is that Morne van den Berg is crocked. He got injured in that last Sharks game, and he hasn't gone, and he was just in sensational form. Um, the thing about Cardiff, they are in sixth, as you said, and by some margin the most successful Welsh team. But they've only won 3 games at home, so it's quite
Mm.
weird. They
Yeah.
have a much better away record than they do in Cardiff at the Arms
Yeah.
Park. I don't know how much that actually means, but I think it's just going to be a really good game, that because Cardiff, love to play attacking rugby. They like to attack the wide channels. They like to use the width of the field. They've scored a lot of tries. It's not unlike the way the Lions play to a degree. So, yeah, I think that is going to, and it's a massively important game in terms of the log. I mean, the Lions can suddenly find themselves, not quite out of it completely, but they drop right down or they go right up. And it's their first tour game. I think they'll target this one massively. They go to Ulster next, going to Ulster already a game down, then it starts becoming really hard. That's a very difficult a place to play Belfast. So I think they'll empty the tank in Cardiff.
Mike, we've had a very nice Six Nations to look at. France eventually taking that title there. I know who I'm backing as the biggest game for the Boks at the end of the year. It's definitely not Ireland. Just what have you made of the victory there, and how do you see
Yeah.
that Bok Island Bok France games
Yeah.
unfolding?
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of a changing of the guard in Europe. I do think Ireland are aging a bit. I mean, they literally had three of their sort of mainstays retire at the end of that game. Look, France, they just got so much depth, and really at forward as well. And a lot of those guys are sort of mid-20s. So, they were talking about this being a generational France team, and I think there is some truth to that. I think they are going to take some stopping in 2027. Yeah, and Springboks versus France at the start of France, the scene of the crime. That I mean, I'm already counting the sleep towards that one.
Yeah.
But just a final note on the Six Nations for me. One of the most disappointing things was Wales capitulating like that
Yeah.
in Cardiff, and I got that wrong. I thought that Wales had been getting incrementally better under Matt Sherratt, the Cardiff coach, who's got them to six in the URC, and they did seem to be building. And I mean, they were playing England, who are their most bitter rivals, and then just to sink without trace by 50 points, you wonder now. They're on 17 consecutive defeats. I mean, how are they ever going to win a game again? I don't know. There's even talk of them dropping into Europe's second tier competition, below the Six Nations. I mean, I even heard Sam Warburton, who is one of the most Welsh, I mean, he is a quintessentially Welsh rugby player, saying, well, maybe we must just accept we've got to step down a bit and get our game right. And I mean, when you hear guys like that talking about that, you just think, cheap as how far has Wales fallen? So that was a sad footnote for me to the Six Nations, what happened at the Principality Stadium.
I think they need to do a Scotland, Mike. Get a few Saffers in there in Welsh
Yeah.
rugby. I think that's the only way forward. Get a few
Yeah,
big booties there, some tight forwards, who can really rough and tumble kind of thing, and get their forward pack going.
yeah,
Because I feel
yeah,
obviously that is, they just don't offer much up front, and that's where your
yeah, no,
problem starts.
exactly. The only other solution, I think, I don't know if there's any billionaires in Wales, but maybe they'll dangle a carrot Rusty Erasmus's way, and he can fix it for them. They need something like that, an
Yeah.
absolute miracle for them to come right.
And just quickly, guys, on the you guys both saying France is a big game for the Boks at the end of your tour. I don't agree, guys. Ireland is the one to win. The Boks need to get that bogey off their show. I'm sick and tired of hearing these Irish fans saying, "Yeah, you guys win World Cups, but you can't beat Ireland."
Yes.
Come on, beat
And,
the Irish at Aviva Stadium in
yeah,
Dublin. And then I think that stadium might even then do the Rassi song just for
Yeah.
our man
And
there,
and
because
yeah.
you know when we
Yeah,
beaten
no.
France in at the start of France in a World Cup
yeah,
quarterfinal. So I don't really worry about France anymore. We've been there and done that, guys. It's Ireland now. And
Don't
just to
don't
sort of, put the knife in and sort of finish off this, as we're saying, a sort of aging Irish squad, that is a game to do it.
don't you guys want to see a proper bomb squad versus Le Bomb squad? That's all I'm looking forward to. Just Mike, just if we can touch on this lastly, you're working on a piece for Human Rights Day today in South Africa, Friday. Just the role of rugby. We know Rassie is quite big on this in terms of his Springboks, but just the role of rugby in our society. What has that played over the years, especially
yeah,
starting with 1995 and then looking ahead, yeah, even
yeah,
prior to 1995.
yeah. Well, it was the Sharpeville massacre in 1960 that started to turn the screws on South Africa, because it caught all the headlines around the world, and countries started saying, "But this is just despicable what's happened." But our sports teams are still playing against South Africa. How can that be? And that's when some of the big countries that we play sport against started to say, "No, hang on, but this can't be right." Um, yeah, and it's quite funny. A country like New Zealand, they are fiercest rivals, and they kind of got a little bit of an embarrassing past too, because the All Blacks came and played a series here 2 months after the Sharpeville massacre, and they came without any Maori players. They had the South African government said you can tour South Africa, but you can't bring any Maoris. I mean, you think about it now, how could this possibly have been? And it's not that long ago. Um, but yeah, it did take quite a while before South Africa was pushed into almost total isolation in the 80s. But yeah, then 95, transformation really only started kicking off a little while after that. I mean, from 92 onwards, really. And if we look now, how can anyone argue with what Quotas has done for South African rugby? I mean, I can't believe there's still people who say that it shouldn't have been or it shouldn't still be, when you look how completely transformed the Springbok rugby team is. And I just think the cricket as well, they may be just lagging a little bit behind there. And who would have thought, what an irony that the Springboks, who were the sort of hated symbol in South Africa, what they represented white supremacy, are now like the torchbearers, the guys, the pathfinders, and I think rugby can really take a bow, and a guy like Rassie has accelerated it.
Yeah, Ash, don't know if you want to add on to that. You've been working alongside and in front of Rassie for a while, and just how he always it's all about South Africa and what rugby means and can mean to our country.
Yeah, it's all about embracing transformation, and Mike made some very good points here. But just believing in players of color, and trusting any player, whatever race they may be, to do the job. And unfortunately, it took quotas and transformation policies to really give everybody an equal opportunity, and without that, it wouldn't have happened. So that is why I agree fully with Mike there in saying that people complaining about quotas, yeah, devalues, and black players don't feel they're welcome because they just here on the race and all these things. That's not the truth, because if that didn't happen, they would never have even smelled an opportunity because of our past. So, someone like Rassie also, I mean, it wasn't all hunky dory in his early days, cheaters and stormers as well. But then he just, realized that he's got to embrace this, and he's got to, be open and honest with everybody. And to his credit, I mean, he's done amazingly in that regard, on and off the field, with regards to transformation. He's got this open and honest policy with the team as well. He tells the players exactly what's required. Transformation is one of the pillars of the team, alongside winning test matches and growing depth. Those are the three pillars of the Springbok team. And look, they double World Cup champions. Hopefully, the three-peat is still on there in
It is, yeah.
2027, and long may it continue. And that's the blueprint for all South African sports teams.
Thanks for the chat, guys. It was good as always, and another lovely episode that we could discuss the URC, and then also the role of especially rugby in how it has shaped the country in terms of sport. You've been tuned into the last word on rugby. It was good to bring you another episode. We'll be back next week. We'll have four beautiful games, hopefully, to dissect and to see where the South African teams stand in terms of getting into that playoff spots. Thanks for joining us again today, and we hope you will be back tuned in next week. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.